last year, Floyd Fleming, who's our volunteer coordinator and a member of our council, he and I attended the UCC Michigan Conference Annual Convention in Lansing. And at that convention, the keynote speaker was a minister named Nadia Bolz-Weber. She's from Colorado. And she looks unlike any other minister you've ever seen. Nadia Bolz-Weber is very tall. She's got short, spiky black hair and thick, chunky glasses. And she wears really funky clothes and jewelry. And probably the most striking thing about her is her entire body is covered with tattoos. Nadia Bolz-Weber wrote a book 2 years ago called Pastrix, and it topped the New York Times bestseller list for a number of months. She's been interviewed on NPR and on PBS, and she is one of the leading voices in progressive Christianity, which is what we are a part of. And Nadia Bolz-Weber, what I love about her is that she is so deeply rooted in Christian tradition and in Christian scripture. And yet, she has us look at those traditions and those teachings that we grew up with in a new light, with new understanding. And that really is what we're all about. That's why in the UCC, our motto is God is still speaking. And our logo, as you see on my stole, is a comma. Some churches, there's a period. It said, God already said this 2,000 years ago. There's nothing more that needs to be said. We say it's a comma. God is still speaking to us and through us. And that's why I love Nadia's words of integration this morning that Graham read for us. Because most of us who grew up in Christian churches have heard this parable of the mustard seed so many times, and many of us were kind of led to believe that Jesus was scolding us and saying, you have such little faith, so tiny as a mustard seed. And Nadia says, that isn't what he was saying. He was saying, you have the faith of a mustard seed, and guess what? It's all you need. And that is the message for today, because that is the truth. Think about it. The tiniest of seeds has the power within it to transform into this great tree where the birds can make their nests and find rest. That is the truth. It's not that Jesus is scolding us. Jesus is letting us know that within us, we have the same power as that seed. Now, this parable of the mustard seed is told in Matthew, Mark, and Luke's gospel, and it's also in the Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel of Thomas is not in the New Testament. It is one of the newer Gospels that was found. It's part of the Gnostic Gospels that were found in the 20th century. So if 4 Gospel writers included this parable in their tellings of the teachings of Jesus, the early Christians must have felt that this was a parable that really encapsulated Jesus' teaching. So let's look at it. Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. Now, Jesus also said in his other parables, the kingdom of heaven is like yeast in bread. And he said it's like a pearl in a shell. So what do all of these have in common? The seed, the yeast, the pearl. Well, they're all small. They're all hidden inside something. And they all have power. The seed has a power to become a tree. The yeast has a power within it to make bread rise. And the pearl has the power to transform into something valuable. And probably the most famous thing that Jesus said about the kingdom of heaven, seems like I say it almost every Sunday, but Jesus said, The kingdom of heaven is within you. So if we take all of those parables about the kingdom of heaven together, let's look at them. I think Jesus is saying, inside you is something small, and it's hidden. But guess what? It has a great power. A power to rise up in you. A power to grow something of greatness and become something of great value. The problem is for us is that many of us really don't believe that. And that's what we're talking about today, is faith and belief. If there is a tiny seed of faith inside of us, we get to choose whether we want to keep that seed inside of its little shell and container, or if we want to allow it to grow. But we are in charge of its growth. Those of you who are gardeners, you know that when you plant a seed in the ground, in order for it to grow, you have to prepare the soil. You've got to remove the weeds and the rocks. And then you've got to nurture that seed. You've got to nurture it with water and with sunlight. It actually requires work. You're not making the seed come into a tree. That's the power of God at work. But you are working in collaboration with God, as co-creators with God, of making that happen. And so that's really what we're talking about today, is how to make our faith flourish. That's the front cover of our bulletin today. It says flourishing. And I looked up the definition of flourishing in the dictionary, and it says, to flourish is to grow or develop in a healthy way, especially the result of favorable environment. So, if you feel like your seed of faith is not growing, maybe it's because the conditions and environment is not favorable. In order to grow, a seed needs rich soil, free of weeds and rocks. Now, how does this relate to our life? Well, Jesus says in today's gospel that we can move mountains with this faith. We can move all obstacles out of our way. And he says we can move mountains with a 3-step process. He says, ask, believe, receive. And most of us are really good with the asking part. So we say, I ask for a new job, or I ask for a relationship, or I ask for perfect health and a life of peace. We're good with the first step, but we can't get to the third step, receive. We can't get there without the second step, which is believe. And many of us, even though we do the asking, we don't really believe. And I hear people say, well, I'm looking for a job, but the job market right now is really bad, and who's going to hire someone at my age? Or I hear someone say, I'm asking for a relationship, I'm open to it, but you know, all the good ones are taken, and at this stage of my life, I think I'll probably just be alone for the rest of my life. Or we ask for perfect health or lives of peace, but then we're focused on these grudges from the past we can't let go of, or we're anxious and worried about the future. Those are the rocks and the weeds. Your seed is not going to grow unless you pull out those negative thoughts, those weeds, remove those rocks, so that your soil can be rich. And then you have to water the seed with positive thoughts and affirmations. And you have to expose it to the sunlight. And the sunlight is the light of God, the light of truth. And the truth is that you have God's DNA within you. You are a son and daughter of God. As Jesus said, you are the light of the world. When you really, really believe that, then you will activate that power to transform your life. Most of you think that you're just the seed, and you forgot that you're not the seed. You're the power within the seed to become a tree. That's who you are. You've got to break free of the limiting thoughts and the limited idea that you're kind of trapped within this little shell, because you're the power within the shell. That's what Jesus came to teach us. I know I say it almost every week, but Jesus said, everything I've done, you can do, these and greater. Jesus was able to activate that God power within him, and he's saying, you can do it too. But most of us really don't believe that. We think that that's just special people like Jesus who get to do that, not little old us. That's only for special people, but it's not. It is true for all of us. A seed needs to die to being a seed in order for it to become a tree. That's what Jesus was talking about when he said we need to die. He's not talking about that we need to die at the end of our life. He's talking about we need to die right now to the idea that we are just the seed. And we need to awaken to the truth that we are the power within the seed, the transforming power to co-create our lives of peace and joy and abundance and prosperity. When we believe that, we will be able to move mountains. And that's why Jesus says, seek ye first the kingdom, and then everything else will be added. So that's what we want to do. We want to remember that an apple seed, its purpose isn't to stay an apple seed. The reason God created the apple seed is to become an apple tree where it will bear much fruit. And that's why God created you. Not to stay in your little human shell, but to realize that within you is this divine power, and that you can access it, you can nurture it, you can make it grow. In the epistle this week, I had a quote from Anne Frank. And Anne Frank said, everyone has inside of them a piece of good news. And the good news is that you don't know how great you can be, how much you can love, what you can accomplish, and what your potential is. Everyone has inside of them a piece of greatness. We have got to get to a point in our faith where we really believe that. So I want you to this week think about what you're putting your faith in. Are you putting your faith in the job market? Are you putting your faith in the stock market? And what is it that you're praying to? Are you asking for a new job, but you're praying to an old man in the sky with a long gray beard that's outside of you? Please, God, help me get a job. The purpose of prayer is to connect you with the power within you. It's not outside of you in the sky. The purpose of prayer is so that you can get quiet and still. And it says, be still and know that I am God. That you have the spark of the divine within you. And when you get still enough, when you connect with it, you have the power to transform your life, and you grow strong in faith. Namaste.
Namaste.